Martha Reynolds clutched her carry-on bag as the airplane touched down at Denver International Airport. After spending the past 8 months in Florida, helping her sister recover from hip replacement surgery, she was finally returning to her home in Boulder, Colorado. The familiar sight of the Rocky Mountains on the horizon brought a smile to her face as she exited the terminal. "Mom!" Andy called out her son Daniel, waving enthusiastically from the pickup area. At 35, he had his father's height and her auburn hair, though flecks of grey were beginning to appear at his temples. Martha hurried over and embraced him tightly. "It's so good to see you, sweetheart. The house has been too quiet without you," Daniel said, taking her luggage and loading it into his SUV. "How's Aunt Susan doing?" "Much better. She's walking without assistance now, though stairs are still a challenge." Martha settled into the passenger seat, breathing in the familiar scent of her son's car, a mixture of coffee and the Pine air freshener he'd been using since college. "I missed being home. How are things with you and Jenna?" A flicker of something, hesitation, crossed Daniel's face before he smiled. "We're good. Busy with work. You know how it is." Martha nodded, though she noted the way his knuckles whitened slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. In the 8 years since Daniel had married Jenna, Martha had maintained a cordial relationship with her daughter-in-law, though they'd never become particularly close. Jenna was a career-focused pharmaceutical sales representative, often traveling for work, while Martha had been a high school English teacher before retiring 5 years ago. As they drove through the familiar streets of Boulder, Martha felt a sense of comfort wash over her. When her husband Howard had passed away 7 years ago, she'd considered selling their family home, but couldn't bear to part with the place where they'd raised Daniel and created so many memories. Instead, she'd converted the downstairs study into a bedroom for herself, finding the stairs increasingly difficult on her arthritic knees. "I can't wait to sleep in my own bed tonight," Martha sighed contentedly. Susan's guest room mattress felt like sleeping on concrete. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel again. "About that, Mom, there's something we need to discuss." Martha turned to look at her son, noting the tension in his jaw. "What is it?" "Jenna's been using your room while you were away, for storage mostly. Her company sent her a lot of samples and promotional materials, and with her home office upstairs—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "My bedroom? But where am I supposed to sleep tonight?" Martha asked, confusion giving way to concern. "We've set up the guest room upstairs for you, just temporarily," Daniel added quickly, "until we can clear out your room." Martha fell silent, processing this information. The guest room was on the 2nd floor. The very reason she'd converted the downstairs study in the first place was to avoid climbing stairs with her arthritis. "Daniel, you know I can't manage those stairs every day. My knees—" "It's just for a few days, Mom. A week tops. Jenna's been really swamped at work, and she hasn't had time to reorganize everything." As they pulled into the driveway of the modest 2-story craftsman home that Martha had lived in for the past 30 years, she noticed Jenna's sleek white Audi parked in the garage. The familiar blue front door, the maple tree she and Howard had planted when Daniel was born, the garden beds she'd lovingly tended for decades. Everything looked the same, and yet something felt different. Daniel carried her luggage inside, and Martha was immediately struck by subtle changes throughout the house. Jenna's minimalist aesthetic had expanded into the living room, with Martha's comfortable floral sofa replaced by a sleek grey sectional. The family photos that had once lined the mantel were now arranged in a geometric pattern on one wall, interspersed with abstract art. "Jenna!" Daniel called out. "We're home!" Jenna appeared from the kitchen, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, dressed in yoga pants and a fitted top. "Martha, welcome back!" She offered a quick hug. "How was your flight?" "Long, but uneventful," Martha replied, trying to maintain her composure despite the growing unease she felt. "Daniel mentioned you've been using my room." "Yes, I hope that's okay. With you gone for so long, it made sense to utilize the space." Jenna's tone was matter-of-fact. "I've been swamped with the new product launch, and the samples and materials were overtaking our home office." "I understand, But Daniel knows I can't manage the stairs with my arthritis, Martha said, keeping her voice level. It's just temporary, Jenna assured her, though she didn't quite meet Martha's eyes. We'll get everything sorted soon. Daniel, why don't you take your mother's bags upstairs? Martha followed Daniel up the stairs, each step sending sharp pain through her knees. The guest room was small but neat, with a twin bed, a nightstand and a small dresser. Her heart sank as she realized none of her personal belongings were here. Her books, her reading chair, the quilt Howard's mother had made for them as a wedding gift. "Where are my things?" she asked quietly. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Some are in storage in the basement. Your clothes are in the closet here. I'll bring up anything else you need." Martha sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling very tired. "I'd like to see my room, please." Daniel hesitated. "Maybe tomorrow when you're rested." "I'd like to see it now," Martha insisted, her teacher voice emerging. Reluctantly, Daniel helped her back down the stairs and to her former bedroom. When he opened the door, Martha couldn't suppress a gasp. The room was unrecognizable. Her bed was gone, replaced by shelving units filled with boxes of pharmaceutical samples. Her antique dresser was pushed against one wall, covered with marketing materials. The reading nook where she'd spent countless hours was now a makeshift office space with Jenna's laptop and files. "Where's my bed?" Martha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We moved it to the basement. It was the only way to fit all of Jenna's work stuff," Daniel explained, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Martha stood in the doorway of what had once been her sanctuary, feeling like a stranger in her own home. She thought of the months she'd spent caring for her sister, the daily phone calls with Daniel, where he'd never once mentioned this change, and the realization that she no longer had a proper place in what was legally still her house. The following morning, Martha woke with a dull ache in her knees and back. The twin bed in the guest room was nowhere near as comfortable as her own mattress, which had been specially selected to support her arthritic joints. She lay still for a moment, listening to the sounds of the house, the coffee maker gurgling downstairs, cabinet doors opening and closing, muffled voices. After a painful trip to the bathroom across the hall, Martha dressed in a pair of comfortable slacks and a cardigan, then gripped the handrail tightly as she made her way down the stairs. Each step was a reminder of why she'd moved her bedroom to the ground floor in the first place. The kitchen had changed too, she noted. Her mismatched collection of mugs had been replaced by a matching set in muted grey tones. The refrigerator door, once covered with Daniel's childhood artwork and family photos, was now bare stainless steel. "Good morning," Martha said, entering the kitchen where Jenna was typing rapidly on her phone while sipping from a travel mug. "Morning, Martha," Jenna replied without looking up. "Coffee's fresh. Daniel had an early meeting but should be back around 6. Martha poured herself a cup of coffee, noticing that her favorite mug, a gift from her students when she retired, was nowhere to be seen. "I was hoping to talk to both of you about my room." Jenna glanced up briefly. "I have back-to-back meetings all day, but we can discuss it tonight when Daniel's home. I've got to run. I'm already late." She grabbed her keys and briefcase, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she hurried toward the door. "There's yogurt in the fridge if you're hungry." Before Martha could respond, the front door closed, and Jenna's car engine started in the driveway. Left alone in the silent house, Martha felt a wave of displacement wash over her. This had been her home for 3 decades. She and Howard had painted every room, planted every shrub in the garden, celebrated countless holidays and milestones within these walls. Now it felt like she was an unwelcome guest. With a deep breath, Martha decided to use the day to assess the situation. First, she made her way to the basement, gripping the handrail even tighter on these steeper stairs. The pain in her knees brought tears to her eyes, but she persisted. The basement was dimly lit and cluttered. In one corner, she spotted her bed frame, disassembled and propped against the wall. Her mattress was leaning nearby, partially covered with a plastic sheet. Boxes labeled Martha's Things were stacked haphazardly, gathering dust. She opened one to find her books jumbled inside, the spines of several cracked from careless packing. 8 months. Martha murmured to herself. It took them just 8 months to erase me. Back upstairs, Martha rested her knees before exploring further. In the living room, only a few of her possessions remained. A small landscape painting Howard had given her on their 25th anniversary, tucked away on a side wall, and a porcelain vase from her mother, now relegated to a bottom shelf. The most jarring discovery came when she opened the coat closet. Instead of winter jackets and boots, she found more boxes of Jenna's pharmaceutical samples and marketing materials. Martha's winter clothes were nowhere to be seen. Returning to the kitchen, Martha sat at the table and pulled out her phone. She called her friend Eleanor, who answered on the 3rd ring. "Martha, you're back. How's Susan doing?" "She's much better, thanks," Martha replied, then hesitated. Something strange has happened. I came home yesterday to find Jenna's turned my bedroom into a storage room for her work stuff. They've put me in the upstairs guest room, knowing full well I can't handle those stairs with my arthritis." Eleanor was silent for a moment. "That's concerning. What did Daniel say?" "Agreed that it's temporary, but my bed is disassembled in the basement. My things are in boxes, and Jenna barely acknowledged the issue this morning before rushing off to work." "Martha, that's your house. Your name is on the deed, isn't it?" "Yes, of course. Howard left it to me. Daniel and Jenna moved in after he passed because they said they were saving for their own place, and I liked the company." Martha sighed. "But that was 7 years ago, and they've never contributed to the mortgage." "There is no mortgage. Howard and I paid it off years ago. They help with utilities and groceries, but—" Martha trailed off, suddenly seeing the situation with new clarity. "They've taken over, haven't they?" "It sounds that way," Eleanor said gently. "What are you going to do?" Martha stared out the kitchen window at the garden she'd tended for decades. "I'm not sure yet, but I know I can't keep climbing those stairs, and I won't be pushed out of my own home." After ending the call, Martha made another cup of coffee and settled at the kitchen table with a notepad. She began making a list of her options, weighing each one carefully. Insist that Jenna clear out her bedroom immediately. Move in with Susan temporarily until things were sorted. Look for senior housing options. Consult a lawyer about her rights. None of these options felt right. This was her home, and she shouldn't have to leave or fight to reclaim her space. As a retired teacher, Martha had always believed in clear communication and reasonable boundaries. Perhaps that was where she needed to start. Around noon, Martha heard the front door open. Surprised, she looked up to see Daniel entering the kitchen. "Mom, I thought you might be resting," he said, setting down a takeout bag from her favorite deli. "I brought lunch." "My knees hurt too much to rest," Martha replied honestly. "Daniel, we need to talk about what's happened here." Daniel's shoulders tensed as he unpacked sandwiches. "I know, Mom. I should have told you about the room situation before you got home. It wasn't fair to spring it on you." "No, it wasn't," Martha agreed, accepting the sandwich he offered. "But there's more to discuss than just that. While you were at work, I went down to the basement and saw my things. My bed is taken apart, my books are thrown in boxes, and I can't find half of my belongings." Daniel looked genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry. Jenna was in charge of that, and with her work schedule." He trailed off, seeming to realize how inadequate the excuse sounded. "Daniel, I converted that room specifically because I can't manage stairs anymore. You know that. My arthritis has only gotten worse, not better." "I know, Mom. We'll figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out," Martha said firmly. "That is my room, in my house. I need it back. And soon. Today, preferably." Daniel's expression shifted from remorse to discomfort. "Jenna's in the middle of a major product launch. She needs that space for her work right now. Maybe in a few weeks." "A few weeks?" Martha interrupted, her teacher voice returning. "Daniel Reynolds, I cannot climb those stairs for a few more weeks. My doctor has specifically advised against it. And frankly, I shouldn't have to justify why I need access to my own bedroom in my own home." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Daniel picked at his sandwich without eating. "Mom, Jenna and I have put a lot into this house too. We've updated the kitchen, maintained the yard, and I've appreciated that," Martha said. "But let's be clear, this house belongs to me. You and Jenna moved in temporarily while saving for your own place. That was 7 years ago." Daniel's face flushed. "So what are you saying? You want us to move out?" Martha hadn't expected the conversation to take this turn, but she found herself considering it seriously for the first time. "I'm saying I need my bedroom back today. How you and Jenna arrange her work materials is up to you, but not at the expense of my health and comfort." That evening, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud as Martha, Daniel, and Jenna sat around the dining table. The remains of a hastily ordered pizza lay in the center, barely touched by any of them. After Martha's conversation with Daniel at lunch, he had called Jenna and asked her to come home early for a family meeting. Now, Martha could see the irritation on her daughter-in-law's face as she repeatedly checked her phone under the table. "So let me understand this," Jenna said, her voice clipped. "You've been back for 1 day, and you're demanding we completely rearrange everything immediately?" She tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, a gesture Martha had come to recognize as a sign of Jenna's mounting frustration. "I'm asking for my bedroom back," Martha replied calmly. "The bedroom I specifically converted from the study because my doctor advised against using stairs with my arthritis. The bedroom in the house that I own." Jenna's eyes flashed. "We've been maintaining this house for years, while you were free to go help your sister for months on end. We've invested thousands in updates and repairs." "Which I've always appreciated," Martha acknowledged. "But that doesn't change the fact that I physically cannot continue to use the stairs, and I shouldn't have to in my own home." Daniel, sitting between the two women, looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Jenna, Mum's right about the stairs. Her arthritis is serious. And then perhaps it's time to consider assisted living," Jenna suggested, her tone softening into something that Martha found even more grating, false concern. "Many of these communities are quite nice now, with activities and peers your own age, Martha." Martha felt a surge of indignation. "I don't need assisted living. I need assistance remembering who owns this house, apparently." She took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "I have no intention of leaving my home. What I do intend is to sleep in my own bed, in my own room, starting tonight." Jenna's phone buzzed, and she glanced down at it. "I have to take this, it's work." She stood and walked into the kitchen, her voice dropping to a professional murmur as she answered the call. Daniel turned to Martha. "Mum, we can work this out, but it can't happen overnight. Jenna has all her work materials organized in there. The pharmaceutical samples have to be stored at specific temperatures and—" "Which she can arrange elsewhere in the house," Martha interrupted. "Perhaps in the garage or even upstairs in your home office. The point is, Daniel, this situation reveals a fundamental lack of respect for me and my home." "That's not fair," Daniel protested. "We took care of everything while you were gone." "Including removing almost every trace of me from the common areas," Martha challenged. "My photos, my mementos, even my favorite coffee mug, all gone or packed away. Did you think I wouldn't notice or care?" Daniel had the grace to look ashamed. "That was mostly Jenna's doing. She said it would help the house look more cohesive." "Cohesive," Martha repeated flatly. "This isn't a model home in a magazine, Daniel. It's where I've lived for 30 years. Where I raised you, where your father and I built our life together." From the kitchen, Jenna's voice rose slightly. "Yes, I understand the deadline. No, that won't be a problem. I can absolutely handle it." Martha lowered her voice. "Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Was there ever a plan to give me back my room, or was this intended to be permanent?" Daniel's hesitation told Martha everything she needed to know before he even spoke. "Jenna thought, we thought, since you were gone so long and seemed happy helping Susan, that maybe you'd consider staying with her longer term, or perhaps splitting your time between here and Florida. Without discussing it with me first, without asking what I wanted?" Martha felt a cold realization settle in her chest. "You were hoping I wouldn't come back." "No, not exactly," Daniel backpedaled. We just thought, you thought you could make decisions about my life and my home without consulting me, Martha finished for him. I never thought I raised a son who would treat his mother this way. Daniel flinched as if she'd slapped him. Before he could respond, Jenna returned to the table, tucking her phone into her pocket. I've been put in charge of the entire mountain region for the new drug launch, she announced, her expression triumphant. It's a huge opportunity. I'll need to convert more space for samples and materials. The team will be using our house as a distribution hub for the next 3 months. Martha stared at her in disbelief. Did you hear anything we've been discussing? I need my bedroom back, not less space. Jenna's smile faltered slightly. Martha, I understand you're upset about the changes, but this is my career we're talking about. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Surely we can find a compromise. What exactly would that compromise look like? Martha asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you've taken over my home, packed away my possessions, and now want to use even more of my house for your business without my permission. Our home, Jenna corrected. We've lived here for 7 years. As guests, Martha said firmly, who apparently forgot their status. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel looked back and forth between his mother and his wife, clearly torn. Finally he spoke. Jenna, Mum needs her room back. We'll have to figure something else out for your work stuff. Jenna's expression hardened. After everything we've done, all the money we've put into this place, my career is at a critical juncture, Daniel. I need your support. And I need my son to remember that I'm his mother, and this is my house. Martha said, rising from her chair with difficulty. I've made my position clear. I expect my bedroom to be cleared out by tomorrow evening so I can sleep there tomorrow night. What you do with the materials is your concern, not mine. As Martha turned to leave the dining room, Jenna's voice stopped her. And if we refuse? Martha turned back slowly. Then I'll be forced to treat you like tenants rather than family, and tenants can be evicted. The color drained from Jenna's face. You wouldn't. I sincerely hope it doesn't come to that, Martha replied. But I will not be pushed out of my own home or forced to endanger my health by using stairs my doctor has advised against. The choice is yours. Martha made her way to the stairs, dreading the climb, but determined to have some privacy. Behind her she could hear Jenna and Daniel's voices rising in argument. She's bluffing, Jenna was saying. She wouldn't throw her own son out. I've never seen her like this, Daniel replied, and legally she could do it. The house is hers. So you're taking her side? After everything we've done, this could ruin my promotion. She's my mother, Jenna, and she's right. We should have asked her before changing everything. Martha continued up the stairs, each step painful, but somehow strengthening her resolve. In the guest room, she closed the door and sat heavily on the bed, her knees throbbing. She reached for her phone and called Eleanor again. How did it go? Eleanor asked immediately. Not well, Martha sighed. Jenna sees the house as theirs now. She even got a promotion today that apparently requires using more of the house for her pharmaceutical samples. Without asking you? That's beyond presumptuous. I told them I want my room back by tomorrow night. Good for you. And what did they say? Martha lowered her voice, though she doubted they could hear her over their own argument downstairs. Jenna essentially challenged me to evict them. Daniel seems torn, but I think he understands I'm serious. Do you think they'll comply? Martha gazed out the window at the maple tree, now fully mature, that she and Howard had planted when Daniel was born. Its leaves were just beginning to show hints of gold at the edges. Fall would arrive soon. I don't know, she admitted, but I do know I can't keep climbing these stairs, and I won't be pushed out of my own home. Something has to give, and it won't be me this time. After ending the call, Martha began to formulate a plan. She would give them until tomorrow evening as stated. If they didn't comply, she would need to take more decisive action. It broke her heart to consider legal measures against her own son, but years of teaching had taught her that clear boundaries were sometimes the greatest form of love. Downstairs, the argument continued, voices occasionally rising enough for Martha to catch snippets. Your mother, but this is our life too. You can't just expect her to. 7 years we've lived here, and suddenly Martha closed her eyes, the weight of the situation settling heavily on her shoulders. Whatever happened tomorrow would change their family dynamic forever. She only hoped that when the dust settled, there would still be a relationship worth salvaging. Martha woke before dawn, her body stiff from another night on the unfamiliar guest bed. She lay still, listening to the quiet house, mentally preparing for the day ahead. She had given Daniel and Jenna until evening to clear out her bedroom, but she had no idea if they would comply or if the situation would escalate further. With careful movements, she got out of bed and began her morning routine, taking extra time with her arthritis exercises despite the pain. By the time she made her way downstairs, the house was still quiet. A note on the kitchen counter caught her eye. Mom. Early meeting. Jenna has client visits all day. We'll discuss room situation this evening. Martha crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. More delays, more avoidance. She made herself a cup of coffee and settled at the kitchen table with her phone. After a moment's hesitation, she called her attorney, Richard Hoffman, who had handled Howard's estate after his passing. Martha, it's been a while. How are you? Richard's familiar voice brought a sense of reassurance. I've been better, Richard. I have a situation I need your advice on. Martha explained everything that had transpired since her return home 2 days ago. Richard listened carefully before responding. Legally, your position is clear. The house is solely in your name, and Daniel and Jenna have no ownership claim despite contributing to utilities and improvements. They're essentially informal tenants at will. I don't want to evict my son, Martha said, her voice catching, but I need my bedroom back, and I need to re-establish boundaries in my home. Sometimes the threat of legal action is enough, Richard advised. I can draft a formal letter outlining your rights as the homeowner and their obligations as tenants. That might underscore the seriousness of the situation without immediately resorting to eviction proceedings. Martha agreed, and Richard promised to email her the letter within a few hours. After ending the call, she sat in the silent kitchen, wondering how relationships that should be built on love and respect could deteriorate to the point of needing legal intervention. With a sigh, Martha decided to be proactive. She slowly made her way down to the basement again, enduring the pain in her knees, and began examining the boxes of her belongings. Many had been packed haphazardly, books tossed in with framed photos, winter clothes mixed with kitchen items she rarely used. It would take days to sort through everything properly. Martha found an empty box and began collecting the items that mattered most to her. Howard's reading glasses that she'd kept on her nightstand, the small jewelry box containing her wedding ring, and other sentimental pieces, photo albums chronicling Daniel's childhood. These, at least, she could keep close while waiting for her room to be restored. As she worked, Martha reflected on how quickly things had changed. Before Howard's death, the house had been filled with warmth and laughter. After he passed, she'd welcomed Daniel and Jenna with open arms, grateful for their company during her grief. They had promised it would be temporary, just until they saved enough for a down payment on their own place. But months turned into years, and gradually the dynamic shifted. Martha remembered the first small changes. Jenna suggesting they replace the outdated curtains in the living room, Daniel asking if they could convert the garage into a home gym, both of them gradually taking over more space, more decisions. Or Martha had acquiesced, wanting to be accommodating, not wanting to be the stereotypical difficult mother-in-law. Now she realized her generosity had been mistaken for weakness. By mid-afternoon, Martha's knees were screaming in protest from the repeated trips up and down the basement stairs. She had filled 3 boxes with her most treasured possessions and managed to bring them up to the guest room. Richard had emailed the legal letter as promised, which she printed using the small desk printer in what had once been Howard's office, now converted to a media room with a large television and gaming console. At 4 o'clock, Martha heard the front door open. Jenna's voice carried up the stairs as she spoke on her phone. I'll have the samples organized by region. Yes, we can use my home as the distribution point. No, it's not a problem. Martha steeled herself and made her way downstairs, the printed letter in hand. Jenna was in the kitchen, still talking on her phone, while unpacking what appeared to be more pharmaceutical materials. "I need to go," Jenna said abruptly when she saw Martha. "I'll call you back." She ended the call and set down her phone. "Martha, I thought you'd be resting." "It's difficult to rest when you don't have your own bed," Martha replied evenly. "I see you've brought more work materials home." Jenna glanced at the boxes she'd been unpacking. "Yes, the promotion means more responsibility. As I tried to explain yesterday, this is a critical time for my career." "And as I tried to explain yesterday, this is my home," Martha said. "I notice you've brought more materials in rather than clearing out my bedroom as requested." Jenna's expression hardened. "Daniel and I discussed it, and we feel your request is unreasonable given the time frame. My entire inventory system is organized in that room now. It would take weeks to relocate everything properly." "I see." Martha placed the letter on the counter. "Then perhaps this will clarify my position." "What's this?" Jenna picked up the envelope. "A letter from my attorney outlining my rights as the homeowner and your status as tenants at will," Martha explained calmly. "It also formally requests that my bedroom be restored to its original purpose within 48 hours, or further legal action will be considered." Jenna's face flushed with anger. "You're threatening us with legal action. Your own family." "I'm establishing clear boundaries after my previous ones were ignored," Martha corrected. "I didn't want it to come to this, Jenna, but you've left me little choice." "This is ridiculous," Jenna snapped, slapping the letter back onto the counter. "After everything we've done for this house, the kitchen renovation, the new roof last year, maintaining the yard while you were gone for months. Those improvements were your choice, not requirements," Martha said. "And they don't transfer ownership of my property to you." The front door opened again, and Daniel entered, looking tired from his day at work. He stopped short when he saw Martha and Jenna facing off in the kitchen. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously. Jenna snatched up the letter and thrust it at him. "Your mother is threatening to evict us if we don't give her back her room in 48 hours. After 7 years of living here and putting thousands of dollars into this place." Daniel scanned the letter, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Mom, is this really necessary? Getting lawyers involved?" "I've tried discussing this reasonably," Martha replied. "Yesterday, I asked for my room back by tonight. Instead of complying, you left me a note saying we'd discuss it later, while Jenna brought home more work materials. My request was ignored." "We didn't ignore it," Daniel protested. "We just need more time to figure out a solution that works for everyone." "The solution is simple," Martha said firmly. "I get my bedroom back, and you find another space for Jenna's work materials that doesn't displace me from my own home." Jenna threw up her hands in frustration. "There is no other suitable space. The basement is too damp for the pharmaceuticals, the garage isn't temperature controlled, and our bedroom upstairs is already cramped with both of our home offices." "That sounds like a problem you need to solve," Martha said, "not one that should become my burden. Perhaps it's time to consider finding your own place, as you originally planned 7 years ago." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel's face registered shock, while Jenna's showed a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You want us to move out, just like that?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Martha softened slightly at her son's hurt expression. "That wasn't my first choice, Daniel. I was happy having you both here, until I came home to find myself displaced in my own house. But yes, maybe it is time for you to have your own home, where Jenna can set up her business however she likes." "This is unbelievable," Jenna muttered. 7 years we've lived here, treating this place like our own." "That's precisely the problem," Martha interrupted. "It's not your own, it's mine, and that distinction seems to have been forgotten." Daniel set the letter down on the counter. "Mom, please, can we just take a step back? There has to be a compromise here." "I've already compromised by giving you until tomorrow evening instead of insisting on immediate action," Martha replied. "The letter extends that deadline by another 24 hours. I think that's more than reasonable." "And if we don't comply?" Jenna challenged. You'll really evict your own son? Martha met her daughter-in-law's gaze steadily. I sincerely hope it doesn't come to that. But I will not continue to be treated as a guest in my own home, nor will I endanger my health by using stairs my doctor has specifically advised against. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Howard that Martha felt a pang of grief. Let me see what I can do tonight. Maybe we can at least clear enough space for your bed to be set up again. Thank you, Martha said. That would be a start. Jenna stared at Daniel incredulously. You're giving in. What about my inventory system, my promotion? She's my mother, Jenna, Daniel said quietly. And she's right. We should have asked before taking over her room. Fine, Jenna snapped, grabbing her purse from the counter. You two figure it out. I'm going to stay at Melissa's tonight. I can't deal with this right now. She stormed out of the kitchen, and moments later, the front door slammed behind her. Martha and Daniel stood in awkward silence. Finally, Daniel spoke. I'll start moving things tonight. It won't be completely cleared out, but I'll make sure there's room for your bed at least. Thank you, Martha said again. I appreciate that. As Daniel turned to leave the kitchen, Martha called after him. Daniel, when did we stop talking to each other? Really talking, I mean. He paused in the doorway, his shoulders slumped. I don't know, Mum. Somewhere along the way, I guess we just stopped. Martha nodded sadly. Well, maybe it's time we started again. Daniel gave her a small, uncertain smile before heading toward what had once been her bedroom. Martha remained in the kitchen, wondering if the damage to their relationship could ever be fully repaired, and whether the home she had fought so hard to reclaim would ever feel like a place of harmony again. The next morning, Martha woke to the sounds of movement downstairs. Her body ached from another night in the guest bed, but a sense of cautious optimism lightened her mood. Daniel had worked late into the evening, dismantling shelving units and relocating boxes from her bedroom. When she'd finally gone upstairs to sleep around 11, he was still working, promising that her bed would be reassembled by morning. Martha dressed carefully, her movements slow and deliberate to minimize the pain in her joints. As she made her way down the stairs, holding tightly to the railing, she could hear Daniel on the phone in the kitchen. His voice was tense, almost pleading. Jenna, please, I know you're upset, but no, I'm not taking her side over yours. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. Yes, I understand about your promotion, but Martha paused at the bottom of the stairs, unsure whether to interrupt. Daniel sounded exhausted, caught between his wife and his mother. She felt a pang of guilt, quickly followed by a reminder to herself that she hadn't created this situation. She was merely trying to restore what should never have been changed without her consent. She heard Daniel sigh heavily. Fine, yes, I'll meet you there at noon. I love you too. There was a moment of silence, then the sound of a phone being set down on the counter. Martha entered the kitchen to find Daniel sitting at the table, his head in his hands. He looked up as she came in, and she was struck by how tired he appeared. Dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Have you been up all night? She asked, concerned despite everything. Daniel nodded. Pretty much. Your bed is set up, though it's not perfect yet. I still need to clear out some of the shelving units, but there's room to move around, and your nightstand is back in place. Thank you, Martha said sincerely, pouring herself a cup from the freshly brewed pot of coffee. I appreciate the effort, especially since Jenna left. Daniel finished for her. Yeah, she stayed at her friend Melissa's last night. He hesitated. She's pretty angry, Mom. Martha sat down across from him. I gathered as much from your phone conversation. Daniel looked away, embarrassed that she'd overheard. She thinks I should have taken a stronger stand with you, that I've undermined her career by giving in to your demands. It wasn't a demand, Daniel. It was a request to have my own bedroom back in my own home, Martha pointed out gently. A bedroom I specifically converted because of my medical needs. I know, Daniel acknowledged, and I should have thought of that before agreeing to let Jenna use it for her work stuff. It's just... He trailed off, seeming to search for the right words. Just what? Martha prompted. Jenna has been unhappy here for a while. Daniel admitted. She feels like she's living in someone else's space, never quite able to make it her own. The changes she made while you were gone, they were her way of trying to feel more at home here. Martha absorbed this information silently, sipping her coffee. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed brought a mixture of emotions. Hurt that her daughter-in-law had essentially tried to erase her presence, but also a new understanding of the underlying issues. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she asked finally. "We could have discussed it like adults instead of coming to this point." Daniel ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I didn't want to upset you. After Dad died, you were so adamant about keeping the house exactly as it was. Every time Jenna suggested a change, you'd get this look, like we were trying to erase Dad's memory or something." Martha felt a flush of recognition. It was true. In her grief, she had clung to Howard's presence in every corner of the home they'd shared. Each suggestion to update or modify had felt like another small erasure of him, but that had been years ago. "That was right after he died," she said softly. "Grief makes us hold on to strange things sometimes, but it's been 7 years, Daniel. I've changed too. I'm not opposed to making this house work better for all of us. I just need to be part of the conversation, not presented with fait accompli when I return from helping my sister." Daniel nodded, looking relieved at her understanding. "I'm meeting Jenna for lunch to talk things through. She mentioned something about looking at apartments." Martha's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Already? That seems sudden." "This situation has brought things to a head," Daniel explained. "We've been talking about getting our own place for a while now, but it was always easy to put it off. Your house is in a great neighborhood. The commute is convenient for both of us. And honestly, the financial arrangement has been beneficial, but Jenna's been pushing more recently, especially since her promotion. She wants a place that's truly ours." "And what do you want?" Martha asked, studying her son's face. Daniel hesitated. "I want everyone to be happy. I want Jenna to feel at home wherever we live, and I want you to be taken care of, Mom." Martha reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time, Daniel. And while I appreciate your concern, I'm still perfectly capable of managing my own life and my own home." After finishing their coffee, Martha asked to see her bedroom. Daniel led her down the hall, opening the door with a slightly apologetic expression. "It's not completely cleared out yet, but..." Martha stepped inside and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Her bed was back in place against the wall, made up with fresh sheets and her favorite quilt. Her nightstand stood beside it, Howard's reading glasses and her worn copy of Jane Austen's collected works placed carefully on top. The reading chair had been returned to the corner by the window, though a few boxes of pharmaceutical material still lined one wall. "It's a good start," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Daniel. I'll finish clearing everything out today after I meet with Jenna," he promised. "Your dresser is still in the basement. I'll bring it up this afternoon." Martha sat on the edge of her bed, feeling the familiar support of her mattress. "Tell me more about these apartments you and Jenna are looking at." Daniel leaned against the doorframe. "They're in that new development near downtown, Riverview Heights. Luxury condos with amenities, security, all of that. Jenna's had her eye on them for a while." "Those aren't cheap," Martha observed. "But I suppose with Jenna's promotion..." "The promotion helps," Daniel agreed. "And we've saved quite a bit over the years. Living here has allowed us to put away a substantial down payment." He looked around the room. "I should get ready for my meeting with Jenna. Will you be okay here by yourself?" Martha nodded. "I'll be fine. I'm just going to rest for a while in my own bed. It feels like heaven after those nights upstairs." After Daniel left, Martha spent the morning reacquainting herself with her bedroom. She opened the closet to find it still mostly filled with Jenna's work materials, but a small section had been cleared for a few of Martha's clothes. She made a mental note to bring more of her things up from the basement later, though the thought of navigating those stairs again made her knees ache in anticipation. Around noon, Martha heard her phone ringing from the kitchen where she'd left it. Moving as quickly as her arthritis would allow, she made it to the phone just before it went to voicemail. "Hello? Martha, it's Eleanor. How are things going with the bedroom situation? Martha settled into a kitchen chair, relieved to hear her friend's voice. Progress is being made. Daniel worked through the night to get my bed set up again. There are still boxes of Jenna's work things, but at least I can sleep in my own bed tonight. And how's Jenna taking it? Not well, Martha admitted. She stayed at a friend's house last night. She and Daniel are meeting for lunch right now to discuss looking at apartments. Apartments? So they're actually considering moving out? Eleanor sounded surprised. Apparently so. Daniel says they've been talking about it for a while, and this situation just brought things to a head. Martha sighed. I feel guilty, Elle. I never intended to push them out. Don't you dare feel guilty, Eleanor said firmly. They're adults who should have had their own place years ago, and they should never have taken over your bedroom without your permission. You're merely standing up for yourself. After chatting with Eleanor for a while longer, Martha decided to make herself a light lunch. As she was gathering ingredients for a sandwich, she noticed Jenna's laptop still sitting on the counter where she'd left it in her hasty departure the previous evening. Beside it was a manila folder labeled Reynolds Residence, Valuation and Improvements. Martha stared at the folder, a sense of unease growing in her stomach. After a moment's hesitation, she opened it. Inside were documents that made her blood run cold. A professional appraisal of her home dated 3 months ago. Estimates for major renovations, including converting her bedroom into a permanent home office. And most disturbing of all, a draft letter to Martha suggesting she consider moving to a senior living community with the proceeds from selling the house. Her hands trembling, Martha continued looking through the folder. There were printouts of luxury condos in Riverview Heights, the same development Daniel had mentioned, along with mortgage pre-approval documents showing a substantial down payment that would be sourced from family property liquidation. Martha sank into a chair, the implications of what she was seeing hitting her like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Jenna temporarily using her bedroom for storage. They had been planning to convince her to sell her home, her and Howard's home, to fund their purchase of a luxury condo while she was shipped off to a senior living facility. Feeling slightly ill, Martha closed the folder and placed it exactly where she'd found it. She no longer had an appetite for lunch. Instead, she returned to her partially restored bedroom and sat in her reading chair, staring out at the garden she and Howard had tended together for decades. The sound of the front door opening around 3 o'clock roused Martha from her thoughts. She heard Daniel's footsteps in the hallway, then a gentle knock on her open bedroom door. "Mom, how are you feeling?" he asked, looking more refreshed than he had that morning, showered and changed into clean clothes. "I've been better," Martha replied honestly. "How was your lunch with Jenna?" Daniel entered the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "Productive, actually. We've decided to put in an application for one of the Riverview condos. There's a unit available next month if we move quickly." "That is quick," Martha observed, studying her son's face. "What prompted the sudden decision?" Daniel shrugged. "Like I said earlier, this situation brought things to a head. Jenna's been wanting our own place for a while, and with her promotion, the timing seems right." Martha nodded slowly, debating whether to mention the folder she'd found. Before she could decide, Daniel continued, "Actually, Mom, there's something else we want to discuss with you. Jenna's coming over for dinner tonight so we can all talk about it together." "About what?" Martha asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. "About the future," Daniel said vaguely. "Your future, our future. There are some options we'd like to explore with you." Martha felt a chill, despite the warm afternoon sun streaming through the window. "I see. And what time should I expect this discussion?" "Around 6, if that works for you." "I'm going to make lasagna, your favorite." Martha nodded again, forcing a smile. 6 is fine. In the meantime, would you mind bringing up a few more of my things from the basement? My clothes especially, and my photo albums, if you can find them?" "Of course," Daniel agreed readily, standing up. "I'll get started on that right away. And I'll finish clearing out the rest of Jenna's work stuff from your closet." As Daniel left to retrieve her belongings, Martha remained in her chair, thinking carefully about the evening ahead. Daniel and Jenna clearly had a plan for her future that aligned with the documents she'd seen. Now she needed to prepare herself for their proposal and formulate her response. Outside, the maple tree's leaves rustled in the afternoon breeze, a few early ones drifting down to the lawn below. Martha watched them fall, thinking of all the autumns she and Howard had spent in this house, all the memories embedded in its walls. She had fought for her bedroom, but now she realized the battle for her home and her independence was just beginning. The kitchen filled with the aroma of baking lasagna as Martha set the dining table, placing 3 settings of her best dishes, the ones Howard had given her for their 25th anniversary, which she'd found in a box in the basement earlier that afternoon. She moved deliberately, each plate and glass positioned with precision, each fork and knife aligned perfectly. The formality of the setting was intentional, a subtle reminder that this was her home, her table, her rules. Daniel had spent the afternoon bringing up more of her belongings from the basement and clearing the last of Jenna's work materials from her bedroom. Now he was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on dinner, seemingly oblivious to the tension Martha felt building as 6 o'clock approached. At precisely 5:55, the doorbell rang. "That's odd," Martha commented. "Why would Jenna ring the bell?" Daniel wiped his hands on a kitchen towel. "She forgot her key when she left yesterday. I'll get it." Martha remained in the dining room, listening to the murmur of voices in the entryway. A moment later, Daniel entered with Jenna following behind, looking polished and professional in a tailored blazer and slacks. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm and wore an expression Martha recognized from parent-teacher conferences, the carefully composed face of someone preparing to deliver a rehearsed presentation. "Martha," Jenna said with a tight smile, "you're looking well. I see you've got your room back." "Yes," Martha replied simply. "Thank you for acknowledging that." An awkward silence followed, broken by Daniel announcing that dinner was ready. The 3 of them took their seats at the table, with Martha at the head, her usual place since Howard had passed away. As Daniel served the lasagna, Jenna made an obvious effort at small talk, asking Martha about her sister's recovery and commenting on the weather. Martha responded politely but briefly, watching as Jenna repeatedly glanced at the portfolio she'd placed beside her plate. Finally, as they finished the main course, Jenna cleared her throat. "Martha, Daniel and I have been doing a lot of thinking and research about what would be best for all of us moving forward." "I gathered as much," Martha replied, taking a sip of her water. "We believe we found a solution that addresses everyone's needs," Jenna continued, opening her portfolio and removing several glossy brochures. "Sunrise Meadows is a premier senior living community just 15 minutes from here. They offer beautiful private apartments, daily activities, chef-prepared meals, and most importantly, medical staff on site to help with your arthritis needs." She slid the brochures across the table. Martha glanced at them without picking them up, noting the smiling, grey-haired models engaged in various activities, painting, playing cards, walking on manicured paths. "And how would I afford this premier community?" Martha asked, though she already knew the answer. Daniel jumped in. "That's where our comprehensive plan comes in, Mom. We've had the house appraised, and given the current market and all the improvements we've made over the years, it's worth significantly more than when Dad passed away. The proceeds from selling this house would easily cover a lovely apartment at Sunrise Meadows for many years," Jenna added enthusiastically. "And there would still be plenty left over for your other needs, and some travel if you wanted." "I see," Martha said calmly. "And where would you 2 live while I'm enjoying my sunset years at Meadow Village?" "Sunrise Meadows," Jenna corrected. "And actually, we've put in an application for a condo at Riverview Heights. With the current real estate market, it makes sense for us to invest in property now rather than waiting." "With money from the sale of my house," Martha clarified. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Not exactly. We have our savings for the down payment. But we thought, since we've put so much into this house over the years, the kitchen renovation, the new roof, the landscaping, that perhaps we could share in the proceeds," Martha finished for him. And how exactly would that work, given that the house is solely in my name? Jenna pulled out another document from her portfolio. We've drafted a proposal with the help of a financial advisor. Given our contributions to the property over the past 7 years, we believe a 40-60 split would be fair, with you receiving the larger portion, of course. Martha gazed at her son and daughter-in-law, letting the silence stretch between them. She thought of the folder she'd found, the plans they'd been making behind her back while she was away caring for her sister. She thought of Howard, and what he would say if he could see how their son was behaving. "No," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. Jenna blinked. "I'm sorry." "No," Martha repeated. "I will not be selling my home. I will not be moving to Sunrise Meadows or any other senior living community. And I most certainly will not be funding your condo purchase with the proceeds from the house your father and I paid off decades ago." Daniel leaned forward. "Mom, please just consider it. Your arthritis is getting worse, and this house has so many stairs and maintenance issues. Wouldn't it be nice to live somewhere where you don't have to worry about any of that?" "What I worry about," Martha said, her voice growing stronger, "is being manipulated by my own son and his wife. Did you think I wouldn't notice the appraisal documents, the renovation plans for my bedroom, the draft letter suggesting I consider assisted living, all dated months ago while I was away helping Susan?" Daniel's face paled. "You found those?" "Jenna left her folder on the counter last night," Martha explained. "So yes, I'm aware that this isn't a sudden idea prompted by our recent disagreement. You've been planning this for some time." Jenna straightened in her chair, her professional composure faltering. "We were trying to find the best solution for everyone. The reality is, Martha, this house is too large for you to manage alone. Your health is declining, and frankly, we've invested years of our lives and thousands of dollars into this property." "Which was your choice," Martha pointed out. "I never asked you to renovate the kitchen or landscape the yard. Those were improvements you wanted to make to a home you were living in rent-free, a home that belongs to me, legally and morally." "Mom," Daniel began, his voice pleading, "we're just trying to look out for your best interests." "No, Daniel," Martha said sadly. "You're looking out for your own interests while convincing yourself it's for my benefit. There's a significant difference." Martha stood up from the table and walked to the sideboard, where she'd placed her own folder earlier in the day. She returned to the table and set it down. "I've been doing some planning of my own this afternoon," she explained, opening the folder. "After finding your documents, I called Richard again and had him draw up some papers. I've also been in touch with a realtor friend of Eleanor's. She removed several documents and placed them on the table. This is a formal rental agreement for this house, outlining market rate rent, security deposit requirements, and proper tenant-landlord boundaries. If you wish to continue living here after your lease at Riverview Heights ends, you'll need to sign it." Daniel stared at the rental agreement in shock. "You want us to pay rent after everything we've done for this house?" "Yes," Martha said simply. "If you choose to remain here, you'll pay fair market rent like any other tenant. However, given your eagerness to have your own place, I'm assuming you'll still be moving to Riverview Heights." "The application isn't guaranteed," Jenna said stiffly, "and even if it's approved, we can't afford both rent here and a mortgage there." "I anticipated that," Martha nodded. "Which is why I've also had Richard draft this amendment to your current living arrangement, formalizing your status as tenants at will and giving you 30 days' notice to vacate the premises, should you prefer a clean break." The stunned silence that followed was broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, another family heirloom that had been relegated to a corner during Martha's absence. "You're kicking us out?" Daniel finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Martha shook her head. "I'm establishing clear boundaries and expectations, which should have been done years ago. You're adults in your 30s. It's time you had your own home, where Jenna can freely set up her business operations without displacing anyone else." "And what about you?" Jenna asked. Her professional mask completely dropped now. "You'll be alone in this big house with your arthritis getting worse. What happens when you can't manage the stairs at all? Martha smiled slightly. I've thought about that too. She pulled out another document from her folder. This is a quote from a contractor to install a stair lift, which my insurance will largely cover. And this, she produced another paper, is information about a home health aide who can visit twice weekly to help with heavier household tasks. She looked from Daniel to Jenna and back again. You see, I don't need to be placed in a facility to receive proper care. I can manage quite well in my own home with appropriate accommodations and assistance. Daniel's expression shifted from shock to something like shame. Mom, we weren't trying to trick you or push you out. We genuinely thought Sunrise Meadows would be better for you than struggling alone here. Did you? Martha asked gently. Or was it easier to convince yourselves of that than to admit you wanted my house for yourselves? Jenna began gathering her brochures and papers, her movements sharp with anger. This is ridiculous. We've done nothing but help you for 7 years, and this is how you repay us, with eviction notices and accusations. I prefer to think of it as clarity, Martha replied calmly, something that's been lacking in our arrangement for far too long. Daniel reached across the table for Martha's hand. Mom, please, can't we discuss this reasonably? There has to be a middle ground. Martha looked at her son, Howard's son, and felt a wave of both love and determination. The middle ground, Daniel, is that you and Jenna find your own place, as you should have years ago. I remain in my home, with appropriate support for my medical needs. And once you're settled elsewhere, perhaps we can rebuild our relationship on more honest footing. Jenna stood abruptly. I need some air. Daniel, we should go. Daniel hesitated, looking between his wife and his mother. Jenna, maybe we should... Now, Daniel, Jenna insisted, already heading for the door. With a conflicted expression, Daniel rose from his chair. Mom, I'm sorry things got to this point. I never meant to hurt you. I know, Martha said softly. But intentions aren't enough, Daniel. Actions matter. Your father taught you that. After they left, Martha remained at the dining table, surrounded by the documents and brochures, two competing visions for her future. Outside, she heard Jenna's car start and drive away, the headlights briefly illuminating the maple tree in the front yard as they departed. Martha slowly began clearing the table, her movements deliberate despite the ache in her joints. She wrapped the leftover lasagna and placed it in the refrigerator, washed the dishes, and wiped down the counters. These simple domestic tasks felt like reclaiming her space, inch by inch. Later, as she prepared for bed in her own bedroom, still not completely restored, but undeniably hers again, Martha called Eleanor to update her on the evening's events. You should have seen their faces when I presented my own documents, Martha told her friend with a small laugh. They were so certain I'd go along with their plan. Good for you, Eleanor said approvingly. So what happens now? Will they actually move out? I think so, Martha replied, settling against her pillows. Jenna was furious, but Daniel, I think he understands, deep down. He's always been a good boy, just too eager to please everyone. And how do you feel about being on your own again? Martha glanced around her bedroom at the familiar walls that had witnessed so many chapters of her life. I won't really be alone. I'll have my home health aide twice a week, my friends, my garden club. And hopefully, once Daniel and Jenna have their own place and some perspective, we can work on our relationship. You're an inspiration, Martha Reynolds, Eleanor declared, standing your ground like that. After ending the call, Martha turned off her bedside lamp and lay in the darkness, listening to the familiar creaks and settling sounds of her home. There would be challenges ahead. Her arthritis wasn't going to improve, and maintaining the house would become increasingly difficult. But those were problems to be managed, not reasons to surrender her independence. 3 weeks later, Martha sat in her garden, enjoying the early autumn sunshine. The maple tree's leaves had turned brilliant shades of gold and red, a few drifting down to settle on the lawn with each gentle breeze. The stair lift had been installed the previous week, allowing her to move between floors with ease. Mrs. Gonzalez, the home health aide, had come yesterday and helped with laundry and a thorough cleaning of the bathrooms, tasks that had become too painful for Martha's arthritic hands. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway drew her attention. A moment later, Daniel appeared around the side of the house, carrying a small potted plant. "Mom, got a minute?" he asked hesitantly. Martha gestured to the empty chair beside her. "Always for you." Daniel sat down, placing the plant, a small flowering begonia, on the table between them. "A peace offering," he explained, "and an invitation. We're having a housewarming next weekend. We got the Riverview condo." "Congratulations," Martha said sincerely. "I'd love to see it." Daniel looked relieved. "Really? Even after everything?" Martha reached over and patted his hand. "Daniel, you're my son. I never stopped loving you, even when I had to stand firm against what you and Jenna were planning." "Jenna's still pretty upset," he admitted, "but she's coming around. The condo actually suits her perfectly, modern, low maintenance, close to her office. And there's a business center in the building where she can store her work materials." "It sounds ideal," Martha nodded, "just as this house is ideal for me." They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the leaves fall from the maple tree. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "I'm sorry, Mom, for trying to push you out of your home, for forgetting that it's your house, not ours, for not respecting your independence." "Thank you," Martha said simply. "That means a great deal to me." "We've got a lot to rebuild, don't we?" Daniel asked, his expression serious. Martha smiled, thinking of all the years in this house, all the memories, both difficult and joyful, embedded in its walls. "Yes, but that's what homes are for, Daniel. Building, rebuilding, and making space for what matters most." As they continued talking in the autumn garden, Martha felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had fought for her home and her dignity, and in doing so, perhaps helped her son understand what truly makes a house a home. Not just the walls and roof, but the respect, boundaries, and love that exist within them. She was exactly where she belonged, and now, finally, so were they.